Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausen Pereira. Union Home Minister Amit Shah on Tuesday asserted in the Lok Sabha that Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and Aksai Chin are part of Jammu and Kashmir and that Kashmir Valley is an integral part of the country. Moving a resolution for abrogating some provisions of Article 370 and the Jammu and Kashmir Reorganisation Bill of 2019, the Home Minister said there has been a long-standing demand for giving union territory status to Ladakh, which was fulfilled by the Narendra Modi government. Dismissing the opposition's charge that introduction of the bill and the resolution were a violation of the rights of the people, Shah said nobody can stop him from introducing a resolution on Kashmir in Parliament. The government on Monday revoked some provisions of the Article 370 to take away Jammu and Kashmir special status and proposed bifurcation of the state into two union territories, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, a bold and far-reaching decision that seeks to redraw the map and future of a region at the center of a protracted militancy movement. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze what after the bifurcation of Jammu and Kashmir. Joining me on the program today are Jaidev Ranade, security and intelligence expert and also former additional secretary, Cabinet Secretariat. Also with us on the program, Major General Dhruv C. Katoch, retired Director, India Foundation, and Ashok Sajanhar, former ambassador as well. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. General, I'd like to begin the program with you. So the government has categorically stated that PoK and Aksai Chin are an integral part of the country. That having been said on the floor of the parliament, can we expect something to be done on that front in the near future?
Let me put it this way. This is not the first time that such a resolution has been tabled in parliament. There was a unanimous resolution tabled many years ago. It is an all-party resolution and it had unanimous support of the House. Now, tabling a resolution is one thing and executing it is another as of this point of time. I think it is important to send the political message because sending this political message has got very, very important consequences. And one of the important consequences is when we are looking at simply that part of Jammu and Kashmir, which is in the illegal occupation of Pakistan. I want to start with that, then I just want to give a little bit as far as Aksai Chin is concerned. So far, for a very long time, the dialogue which Pakistan was trying to propagate was that the Gilgit-Baltistan region and the Mirpur-Muzaffarabad region, both of them combined together to what we call the Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. As per the Pakistani perception, that was their territory, and the only thing which was under discussion was the Jammu and Kashmir portion, which is lying with India. I think that particular perception has seen a fundamental shift now. In fact, that shift started about 4 years ago when the government made certain categorical assertions. And now with this, with the bill being passed yesterday, with the presidential order of yesterday, it has become very, very clear which way the government is now going to negotiate. The negotiations now will be that, listen, Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India, as stated by the Home Minister. Now, what is that issue is the illegal occupation by Pakistan of Gilgit-Baltistan and Mirpur-Muzaffarabad. So that is the only thing which has to be negotiated now, and how do we get it back? That is one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is we have this dispute with China as far as Aksai Chin is concerned. It is tragic that this area has never been demarcated, formally demarcated, right? But there is ample historical evidence to buttress the claim that this was a part of. It can fall into the Jammu and Kashmir region as per historical claims. Now, the question is, how do we get this back? Militarily, as of now, I do not think there is an option as of now. When in the future things may change. But I think it is important to keep the issue alive, to keep the diplomatic pressure on, and to let the world know where the red lines are. So we want Aksai Chin back. Yes, that is, we will deal with China on that. And we want the complete Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir back. That is how we have to deal with Pakistan.
Sure. Mr. Ranade, so what are the challenges really going forward as far as this whole situation is concerned?
Well, there are many challenges that are going to come up. But if I can just add a couple of points, I think General Katoch has explained the situation very well. But 2 points I'd just like to add quickly, which is to explain or to underscore the illegality of Pak-occupied Kashmir, Gilgit, Baltistan, etc. being taken by Pakistan. You will recall that in 1947, it was British-led officers of the Pak Army or British officers of the Pakistan Army and the Pak Army who organized a band of Lashkars and Pak Army troops, and they came in and took over that territory. So the original boundary or map of Jammu and Kashmir very well included that portion in this, and that is what was acceded to India at that point in time. Same thing with Aksai Chin. It was a part of the old J&K, and what General said is quite correct. There was no official demarcation, but it was very much a part of the map. So one was in 47, there was an illegal occupation that came in. The second was after 62 or in 62, the 1962, the Chinese took over Aksai Chin. So both have been illegally occupied. The second point, that is going forward now, Aksai Chin, PoK, etc. are in our constitution as an integral part of India. So that's a constitutional thing, everyone subscribes to it. So that is a position that the government of the day has to maintain, and it will maintain. This government, as the General correctly pointed out, has now shifted the discussion, I would suggest even in the international sphere, from just talking about Kashmir being Kashmir Valley to the entire Kashmir, that is the PoK, etc., everything. And with the abolition of 370 and 35A, what they have effectively done is removed any discussion on Kashmir, and more importantly, removed the efforts by some powers, particularly Pakistan and China, to dabble in Kashmir out of the equation totally by saying it's part of India. There's no 370, there's no special provision. It's as much a part of India as everyone else. So that complicates the situation for them. But as far as we are concerned, we've taken it over entirely. The next bit is to win over, as they say, to calm the atmosphere there, to win it over. And I think an important part of that is declaring it a union territory, which means the center will be directly responsible for Kashmir. And I suspect, in fact, I anticipate that having conducted the panchayat elections and now having done this, you will find the center looking at it, putting a lot of developmental funds into it, and we will see prosperity and development work taking place within the next 2 to 3 years.
Sure.
I mean, I think that is the way it will go.
Right, so
the demand for Aksai Chin, etc., of course, the pressure will rise.
Okay, talking about Aksai Chin, before we talk about PoK, let's concentrate on Aksai Chin for a brief while, Ambassador. So, historical rights and claims, of course, are there, like pointed out by General. But what about the agreements that we signed with China in 1993 and 1996, the Indo-China agreements on the line of actual control? What happens to that?
No, I think those are in terms of the disputed boundaries, disputed borders that we have, and basically in terms of maintaining tranquility along the line of actual control. And I think this is, as far as Aksai Chin is concerned, that is a disputed part, even as far as, for instance, even Arunachal Pradesh is concerned. That is also a disputed part, but what we have agreed that we will maintain peace and tranquility on both sides of the border. You'd also recall that in 2005, when we were talking about, and we set out the guidelines and parameters for solving the border dispute, there also we said, there were some parameters that were identified by both the sides, that, places which have population, they would not be sort of, exchanged by the two sides. You would recall that the whole issue, the whole practice of appointing special representatives, that was undertaken in 2002, 2003. So far, we've had about more than 21 meetings between the SRs, and we are sort of, trying to take this whole issue forward. I think the important point as far as Aksai Chin is to be noted, I'll just make two comments here. One is, you would recall that when the Chinese President Xi Jinping came to India in September 2014, and that was the time when, we had the incursion of a very major excursion incursion by the Chinese troops on, I think, the area of Depsang Begoldi and all this sort of things. And Chumar area.
Yeah.
So yeah, Depsang Begoldi was in April when Li Keqiang had come in April 2013. Right. So here it was in Chumar. So when this thing happened, then at the joint press conference in Hyderabad House, the Prime Minister had made it very clear that if we, the two countries, wish to realize the full potential of the bilateral relations, peace and tranquility on the border will have to be maintained. And I think that was a message that really went home. So from September 2014 till June of 2017, we saw that there was by and large peace, tranquility and quiet on the border as far as this is concerned. Of course, in June 2017, we saw Doklam, and I think the rationale for that was entirely different. So from June to August 2017, that is what happened. And then in between what the discussions in Astana, the Astana consensus that happened in 2017, it was that disagreements should not be allowed to develop into disputes. So I think both sides are quite clear that we should try, and of course latest was from Wuhan, that you send out strategic communications to your military commanders and to others that we have to maintain peace and tranquility.
Right.
So whatever is, as far as Aksai Chin is concerned, you know, however we want to make a change, we will have to make sure that at least in short term, near medium term, it will not be as a result of any conflictual engagement between India and China.
Sure.
You would also recall that very recently Prime Minister Modi himself had said that this is a border, India-China border. It might be a disputed border, but it has not seen a single shot being fired across it over the last 40 years, since 1987. There's not been a single shot that has been fired across it. So I think we have to keep that in mind. Of course, as far as legal position is concerned, as far as the 1994 joint consensual resolution in the parliament is concerned, Aksai Chin continues to be part of J&K, which is an integral part of India. But how to actualize that resolution, I think that we will have to sort of, you know, keep under close watch as we move forward.
So that having been, yes.
A minor point in this, you did refer to the LAC and then raised this question. The line of actual control of the LAC means exactly that. It does not mean the border. And in fact, both sides have said that does not represent the border. So just a minor clarification.
Absolutely. So that, since we are here, I must ask you, Mr. Ranade. So as we up the pressure and as we tighten the screws, can we expect some kind of a pushback from China?
Well, I think China at the moment, with all its own problems, including the trade war that's going on, with the internal dissatisfaction that is spreading against some of Xi Jinping's policies, I don't think they would be interested in really muddying the waters or interfering, which doesn't mean that they will not extend support to Pakistan. But I don't think they will intervene directly on this issue. They might describe it as a wrong step or something like that. But at the moment, I don't think, they would like, or they would directly escalate matters. Pakistan is a different issue.
Right. So how do we, General, how do we maneuver around these challenges that may arise on the LOC and the LAC in the days to come?
No, on the LAC, you know, as far as Aksai Chin is concerned, you know, speaking purely from the military point of view, it doesn't make any sense to go in for a military adventure. So that is not on the cards and is not going to happen. But it is important, as Ambassador Sajjanahar said, to keep the legal position open. So legally, I think there is absolutely no doubt that this is India's claim. It is part of our map, it is part of our constitution, and it has also been, there has been a resolution in Parliament, and now we have two resolutions in Parliament. Now, that having been said, we leave the line of control, the line of actual control aside. It is important to maintain that peace of tranquility across the line of actual control, because both India and China are actually trying to get their economies ahead. And a conflict by these two great countries, very major powers now, will only benefit third parties. So I think there will be appropriate political wisdom on both sides to avoid conflict and to resort to other measures to resolve differences. As I think it was one of the Chinese leaders, I'm forgetting which one it was, he says, let us leave it to future generations. He didn't even say generation, he said future generations, it means say 50 to 100 years. So I think that is something which is going to lie. Now we come down to the other region when we are talking of the line of control. Now, post the Shimla Accord, there was an agreement reached as part of the Shimla Accord that we will respect the line of control. Both sides will respect it. Now, Pakistan violated that in 1999 when they carried out the Kargil incursion and they suffered the consequences. It was basically because of that the whole world started looking on Pakistan as a terrorist state. You see, the start point was 1999, and I think it was at that point of time, a very appropriate response by the Indian Prime Minister Vajpayee at that time, to say that we will not cross the line of control. Now, that there have been people who have said it was not an appropriate decision. You know, there are two sides to it. But looking at it as a strategic option, I think it was a good decision, because it strengthened India's position. We evicted the Pakistanis, we evicted the army personnel from the Northern Light Infantry, and Pakistan was actually put into a corner that they are a terrorist state. So now we come back, now let us get back into these two regions. One is Gilgit-Baltistan and the second is Mirpur-Muzaffarabad. Mirpur-Muzaffarabad is commonly called PoK, but actually both of them combined together is POJK, if you want to use the correct terminology. Now, you know, when you are looking at Gilgit-Baltistan, it's got a natural corollary, you know, when you're looking at trade, those links are with Kargil and Ladakh. It has been historical, those linkages are there. I think at some future point of time, when Pakistan starts disintegrating, and they will disintegrate at some point of time, it is the people of Gilgit-Baltistan who will say that they want to merge with India. That will come about because that is a historical way by which those people interacted with each other. Those are the lines of communication. And you will find there are similarities in language, dress, similarities in customs.
Just one point that I'd like to make, General. But over the years, over the last 7 decades or so, Pakistan has done a great job in changing the demography of the region. So that is going to play out at some point.
They have changed the demography, but not to. But you see, there is still a very large portion of the original inhabitants there. I agree that the Punjabi settlers have moved in very large areas, especially into the places which are more cultivable. But when you're looking into the way history will develop, I think, I'm really looking at Pakistan imploding within itself, the way its economy is going, the way it's expending money on the armed forces, which it can ill afford, and the way it is actually promoting terrorism, which at some point of time is going to hit them themselves. But the Mirpur-Muzaffarabad region, I think, is going to be a totally different kettle of fish. Even if you get back that territory, to merge that population with the Indian population, I really don't think it'll be a good idea. It is my view. Of course, constitutionally, the whole thing is ours.
Right.
But Gilgit-Baltistan, I think, is important. And one point which my colleague raised earlier, when he talked about the British actually supporting them, when you're looking at the Brits, you must give it to them. Their strategic foresight. Even when they were handing over India, they realized the importance of Gilgit-Baltistan to them. And they wanted to ensure that Gilgit-Baltistan goes to Pakistan so that Pakistan would be their ally, right? And they would be able to keep a watch on both China and the Soviet Union.
Right.
So they had their foresight there. That was one of the reasons actually why they gave that support.
Sure. So now talking about Pakistan, Ambassador, Pakistan has already written to the UN and they are going to up the pressure really as far as this entire issue is concerned. So diplomatically, our diplomats will have to now go into overdrive and try and deal and sort this issue out at the international level as well, isn't it?
Frank, I don't think we've been waiting for Pakistan to come forward and then we sort of, have a reactionary sort of a reactive policy and all. Not at all. As you would have seen Dr. Jaishankar when he met Pompeo last week in Bangkok, he already had briefed him that something of this nature, I don't know whether he was fully aware of, what is the nitty-gritty that is going to be done as far as the decision yesterday in terms of reorganization in terms of 2 union territories, but he had sensitized Mike Pompeo. As far as the P5 members are concerned, the ambassadors are concerned, our Foreign Secretary briefed them yesterday. The other non-permanent members of the UN Security Council have also been briefed. So, and I'm sure the same thing is happening as far as different capitals are concerned, and also New York is concerned. So, we've not really been waiting for Pakistan to up the ante so that we are going to respond to it. I think we've been proactive in that because diplomatically we have become very nimble-footed in all these things, as most of the, our successes in recent past have demonstrated. So, but I don't think Pakistan will have much traction for a variety of reasons. One, I think it is crystal clear to everyone that Pakistan is the epicenter of terrorism, and the basic problem as far as India-Pakistan relations are concerned is the export of terrorism from Pakistan to India. And we have told the world very, very clearly, number one, it is for improvement of governance. Number two, it is entirely an internal matter as far as India is concerned. Number three, it is to promote a social development in Jammu and Kashmir, and as a union territory will be able to do it much better. And also the economic development, because earlier, Indian laws in terms of reservation, in terms of women's rights, human rights, etc., they were not applicable to Jammu and Kashmir. Now all those laws and rules will be applicable. And I think all the slew of initiatives and reform programs that the current government has taken since 2014, all those will now be implemented. And I think that is what the real challenge for the government is going to be. How to, what the Home Minister said in Rajya Sabha yesterday, that it is because of 370 and 35A that the development of Jammu and Kashmir has not been able to take place. Now I think will be the time to demonstrate, to show that once 370 and 35A are out of the way, what is it that is possible in terms of improving the development and improving, bringing peace in that region. I think the reaching out to the people of Kashmir, Jammu is celebrating, Ladakh is celebrating. So it's only the people in a few districts in Kashmir which need to be, you need to reach out very proactively. There has to be no sense of, being victorious, no sort of, exulting, no sort of chest thumping that we've achieved, nothing of that sort. I think we have to project it that it is a win-win situation for both, and particularly for the youth of Kashmir.
Sure.
And so there are a large number of initiatives on the economic front, on the social front, which the government needs to, and it has to do it proactively.
Right. Closing comments now from all my guests, starting first with you, Mr. Ranade. So, was the time right to go in for something like this, especially considering what was happening in Afghanistan? Pakistan seems to be getting closer to the United States. Now, they might get some funding as well from the United States and then use that here in India. So, the time was right to go ahead with something like this.
I think the timing was perfect, frankly. There were a couple of things which were taking place. Apart from anything else, the manner in which the Chinese had upped their pressure on us to start talking to Pakistan and to resolve the Kashmir issue. As I said, it was raised even at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting by Xi Jinping. There was pressure coming on us from there. There had been contacts earlier between the Chinese and the Hurriyat leaders. We were aware of that. Second, Pakistan intensifying its activities along the LOC and trying to push people in, them trying to activate their cells already within Kashmir. I think Trump's remarks, though off the cuff, certainly played a role. I think the situation was such that the government decided that they have to now act, and they took the decision. I think it was planned, of course, but the timing was perfect. If I can make just two quick points. As far as the legal position of this is concerned, which Imran Khan has gone to the UN. Well, Pakistan has already started doing it in PoK, as he says, PoK, JK, whatever. I mean, PoK, Gilgit-Baltistan. They have already started doing it. And after the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor came in, they have been trying to further integrate Gilgit and Baltistan into Pakistan, including changing the demography. And finally, few years ago, the IISS in London, they carried out a survey within PoK Gilgit Baltistan, asking the people what they would like, independence or Pakistan or India, whom they would like to join it. And they voted in that referendum to join India. I believe when the results of the report were published in the form of a booklet, there was pressure applied on them and they had to withdraw it. But this is the fact.
Right. So, General, what's the best way forward then?
I'm totally in conformity with what Mr. Ranade has said. But to quote a little bit of Shakespeare, in your channel, there is a tide in the affairs of men, which taken at the flood leads to great fortune. I think, this was the flood, and you've taken a decision at the right time. And I've got absolutely no doubts that it's going to lead to great fortune. I think the biggest beneficiaries, Ambassador Sajjanhar said that we shouldn't look on it as a victory. He's right. But we should look on it as a victory for the people of Kashmir. I think it is a victory for the people of Kashmir. They have been fed a false agenda. And it is that false agenda which has kept them back for so many decades, which has put insurgency into their laps. 2 generations we have lost. So ultimately, the people of Kashmir have lost a great deal. And I think with this revocation, a change is going to come about. I think one of the important things which I was also discussing earlier during the break which we had, the thing is that with this a union territory status, what is really going to happen is that the linkage which was existing, there is a political linkage between the Hurriyat, the PDP, the National Conference and the Pakistani ISI.
Right.
There is a very strong linkage. I think that linkage will now break. With the break of that linkage, their ability to operate with their overground workers and give support to certain terrorist activities, stone pelting, etc., I think all that will go down. I am looking at a very, very peaceful winter. There will be some disturbance, some civil disturbances, which some of these prominent leaders will like to ignite. But people are still forgetting. There are alternate political voices which are coming up in Kashmir. There are the young boys and girls who have entered politics. And I think they are the future of Kashmir. And it is going to be their victory. This abolition of 370 is going to be their victory. They are a union territory now. But once peace comes in due course of time, I think it'll revert back to a full-fledged state.
Absolutely. And Ambassador, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
Well, you asked the question whether this was the right time, and General Katoch has quoted Shakespeare. Let me quote Kabir, and he says, "Kal kare so aaj kare so ab." And I think the government had just come in with such a huge majority. And this was bang on top of the agenda, abolition of 370, abolition of 35A. So I think there couldn't have been a better time. What I find it rather gratifying and also satisfying, and I think that must have come as for the government also, to see such a large number of regional parties also coming in support of this. You have the BSP, you have Aam Aadmi Party, you have
YSRCP,
absolutely TDP, the Biju Janata Dal, meaning all ADMK, meaning these and Shiv Sena, of course, are their NDA partners. But all of them have come, and so, the victory that they got yesterday, 125 to 61, it's more than a 2/3 victory that they were able to, and that is a house where they do not have a majority. So I think that itself speaks as to what swell there was as far as the country is concerned. That the country itself wanted to get rid of these discriminatory provisions and to integrate Jammu and Kashmir completely into India so that it can join in the mainstream of development.
All right. On that note, then, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's it from me. See you again next time.